So have you been trying to figure out the proper inflation pressure for the tires on your RV and you've been following the placard on the side or the cold inflation pressure rating on the side of the tire? I can tell you if you're doing that, you're likely not inflated properly and you could be at risk. Stick around, I'm going to show you how to do it the right way. Welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, we're glad you found us. My name is Scott, and along with my wife Ellen, we've been living and traveling full-time for the past 3 years in this 2022 Riverstone 39 RK-FB fifth wheel. I am also a certified RV technician, and on this channel we give practical tips, tours of campgrounds, and just general RV lifestyle things, hopefully to help you get the most out of your RV lifestyle, whatever that may happen to be. So if you like that kind of content, and you haven't already, please do subscribe. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comments below. We like to hear from you, and that really helps out the channel. Alright, so this is about the 400th time I'm trying to do this video. I keep on getting interrupted on the phone. So let me give you a little history as to why I'm doing this video. Back in 2023 and the beginning of 2024, we had 2 wheel failures. And it turns out that those were manufacturing defects with the wheels. The wheels were done by Lion's Head, and they made all good. They replaced them, all that kind of stuff. But I ended up switching them out completely for high spec. I got a couple of videos about that. I'll put a link down below, and maybe you see a little link up here that you can click on to get more information there. But during the investigation, I was kind of looking to see if we may have contributed to the problem. This is before I realized that it was a manufacturer's defect. And one thing I noticed is that on our tires, the center tread was a little bit more worn than the other treads. And you probably already know that's a clear indication of the tire being overinflated. But I had been talking to Moride about our suspension, because we have independent suspension. I had asked them, did they think that there was any correlation between the wear on the tire and maybe some misalignment on the suspension, and they said no, it wasn't. It's probably due to inflation. So I said, okay, well, turns out that we're overinflated. Now, I thought that was kind of odd because we were inflating cold at 123 psi, which is what's recommended on the placard on the side of the RV. And then on the tire, the max cold inflation pressure there is 125. So 123, didn't think we were overloaded. But as it turns out, that 125 PSI rating on the tire is when the tire is under maximum load. It means it's holding as much as it's rated to hold. And that turns out to be like 4,805 pounds per tire. Well, our RV has a gross vehicle weight rating of 19,084 pounds. That's the maximum that it can weigh. And as you know, some people overload their RVs, other people don't. The RV is different, every lifestyle is a little bit different. People carry more and less stuff. So the way that the manufacturer does this calculation is they calculate the PSI based on what the RV is totally gonna be able to hold. Its maximum gross vehicle weight rating, what it's supposed to be the maximum, right? So how do you figure out how much you actually weigh or how much load is on each one of those tires? Now, the real right way to do it is weigh each one of the tires, go somewhere and have that done, and you'll get individual weights for each tire, but that's not really practical. What's more practical is to go to one of these CAT scales that you'll find in the truck stops. And we do that regularly because we always have a concern about being overweight, right? We want to be rated the right weight for the truck and all that safety kind of stuff. So we know what we have for weight on these wheels. And sometimes it varies. It goes from like 15,800 to 16,002. So we're going to say that it's 16,000 just for easy math. And we have 4 tires, so that's 4,000 pounds per tire. Now that can be different, right? Because some people load the back of the RV more, the front, or you might have a slide on one side that has, you know, the refrigerator on one side, not the other. So each tire is going to kind of carry a different load, but it's easy and practical just to average it out in most cases, and that's what I've decided to do. So you take the 4,000 pounds per tire, and then, so what's the PSI supposed to be? If it's not the maximum, that's lower than the maximum that the tires can support, what should I put the PSI at? Well, it turns out that manufacturers publish a load inflation table for all of their tires. Not all manufacturers do it, but most do, particularly if they're building to the standard in the United States and using the guidelines of the Department of Transportation. I'll show you a little bit of information of how I arrive at that. So it turns out that we were overinflated because the real PSI that we should be loading to based on what we're carrying is 105 PSI, not 123. So now that could be the reason that a lot of people have blowouts and tire failures, is because they're routinely overinflating because they're following guidelines but not necessarily doing the math. Now, there is no doubt there are tires out there that are cheap tires that will fail regardless, just because the quality's bad. But I've got to say that maybe it's not always the case. Maybe it's the inflation problem, right? So that's neither here or there. Let me show you the load inflation table for for our tires and how I did the math there, and I'll show you some other resources that'll get you on the path to go figure out what your load inflation should be, or your tire PSI should be for your particular load, and hopefully that'll help you to get out there and do things safely. All right, so here we go. All right, before I get into that, and I want to stop here and let you know that because this is a life and safety thing, I have to implore you to do your own research. This is just the methodology that I used. You don't really want to pay attention to what everybody out there is chatting up in the forums and stuff. That's a whole big echo chamber, really good information, really bad disinformation being mixed and scrambled around, and I was on one of the forums and I could see people just giving out completely incorrect, bad advice that's going to get people into trouble. So that's just my opinion, but if you understand the science and the math behind this, you clearly see that there's some people getting bad information out there, and then other people unknowingly just repeating it, right? And they're getting lucky. They don't have any problems, and that's good, but you should do your own research. So again, I'm just another talking head out here on the internet and social media. Don't take my word for it. Do your own research. I'm giving you this information so you at least have some resources to track down on your own to come to a conclusion that you're comfortable with. All right, so here we go. All right, so let me start here. Let me show you a couple of weigh slips from our truck here, from the CAT scale. All right, so hopefully that's big enough for you to see. Let's see, maybe I can make it bigger. No, guess not. Okay, well, hopefully you can see this. You can see that the trailer axle here is 15,880 pounds. So if we divide that 15,880 by 4, we get about 3970. All right, that's one weight that I had. And then here's another one, just a little bit more recent. And here we go with 16,120. So that goes to where I was talking about us being between that 15.8 and that 16.2. Okay, so we got that. Let me get those out of the way. And now I have the Cooper tires, and I went out and I found this load inflation table for Cooper truck tires. And you look, what's most important, of course, is the size, right? So here we have the size. We have the 215/75 R17.5, and we run them in a single configuration. What the single configuration means is that it's not dually, right? The tires aren't right next to each other. They are on each end of the axle. So that would be single on one axle and then single on the other axle. Now, here you go with the 14, they are H-rated tires as well. So I'll just follow this over, and you can see the maximum PSI here on the top is 125, and that means at 125 PSI, each one of these tires can hold 4,800 pounds roughly. Okay, so we just did the math at our 15.8 measurement, and that gave us the 3970. So if I go along here, that was the 15.8 divided by 4 because I have 4 tires. If you had triple axle, you would have 6 tires, so you would just divide by 6 and then do the math. So I've divided by 4, we come up to 3970, and 3970, this is just coincidence here on the dual. Remember, we're looking at single here. 3970, I'm in between 95 and 100. Let's see, where is it? Right, okay. So I'm in between 95 and 100 PSI. So that would be the PSI that each tire should be filled to. Now, of course, I had the other one was what, 16,000 roughly, 16,000, call it 200, divide by 4 on that. That gives us 4,050 pounds. If I look at the table again, 4,050, that gets us to the 100 PSI, right? So that gets me in between, again, the 95 to the 100 PSI right there. Comfortably, I do 105. I'm comfortable at 105, and what I've noticed with the 105 compared to when we were running before, and there might be some contribution from the new wheels as well, but my tires now run the maximum after driving, even with temperatures up into the 80s, the ambient temperature. The PSI rarely goes above 130 PSI. And then the temperature rarely goes above 100 PSI. When we were running at the 123 PSI, the PSI on my tire pressure sensor, tire pressure monitoring system would show much higher than that, and the temperatures were much higher. So, but we have different wheels now, which are aluminum. They've got more holes in them, so a different design. So those might dissipate heat a little bit more. So that might be contributing to that heat situation. But nonetheless, with lower PSI, I am seeing a better run. And I've noticed on the tires, I've checked them, we've got probably 4,000 to 6,000 miles on them now. The wear is not getting any worse. So I think that I've nailed it on that. Now, you may find that for your particular tire, you may go out to the manufacturer and look for the load inflation table, and you may not be able to find that for that specific manufacturer. And that's not a big deal, because what I have found is that most manufacturers in the US, or that are selling into the US markets, hopefully they're following the standards set by an organization called the TRA, which is the Tire and Rim Association, and they are based in Akron, Ohio, which coincidentally is where Goodyear is also based out of. And what they do is they set standards for the manufacturers for wheels and tires, and what the specs should be. And what I've found is that if you have a tire, in my case it's the 215/75R17.5, if you happen to find two different manufacturers that do have the load inflation table, those load inflation tables look really, really similar, almost exact. And doing some research, I've discovered that in the absence of the manufacturer publishing a load inflation table, you can pretty much use the generic ones that you'll find out there, provided that the size is the same, okay, and the rating of the tire is the same, like if it's an E tire or an H tire, etc. The tables will usually match up. There is a little caveat. You can't take that as Bible, though, because let me show you back on the screen here. Here is the load inflation table again for mine, and we can see that up on the high end of this particular tire, the H rated is 4805, but at the 120 PSI, it's 4720, okay? Now, I'll go to this is a Cooper tire. Now, I'll go to the Bridgestone, and this is a little bit small. Let me get that big so we can see it here. And we're gonna find that 215/75. Now, they have this one. There's a couple of caveats here. So here it is, same size tire. We go out, and at the high end, it's 4805, but remember, on the Cooper, this in the 120 PSI, here it's 4650, but back on that Cooper, it was 4720. So a little bit higher there. So you do want to do that research and find what you're comfortable with, and go from there. So, all right, I had to roll back a little bit because my SD card in the camera ran out of space for whatever reason. So I wanted to let you know that I did a lot of research before doing this video. Even though I kind of made this video really concise, there's a lot of information that backs it up, and I will put the link to all of those things in the description below. I wanted to just talk about a couple of them. One is this Wolf Trek RV stuff. I don't know Bradley Wolf personally. I ran into him on a Riverstone group. Somebody had posted a question about inflation. I chimed in, and then he chimed in and he referred me over to his site. We had a lot of good information, so I'll show you that. That's right here. And he's got a lot of good stuff here. I just discovered all the other stuff he has here. So you might want to subscribe to him. Again, the link will be down below. Here is his actual part of his tire stuff. It's called, he calls it the Fifth Wheel RV Tire Comparison Bible. Puts a bunch of information out there. Then the other one that I looked at was RV Tire Safety. This is with Roger Marble. He's got some recent information out here as well. Bradley Wolf's information is current up until April of this year. I'm doing this on June 5th. So these guys have both put new information up in April. So there's a ton of stuff out here about RV safety, talk about tires, all that kind of stuff there. And then finally, here's the Tire and Rim Association, which is what a lot of the U.S. manufacturers follow to determine how the tires are manufactured, what the rating should be, and things like that. I referred to those a little earlier in the video. And then what I have here is the Goodyear has some RV tires guides as well. May not be specific to your brand, of course, but they do have a ton of information out there, some checklists and things, and the proper way you should inflate your tires in terms of time of day, how you shouldn't adjust them after they warm up, and then how all tires on one axle should have this same inflation, stuff like that. You can look at all of that. And then here's the interesting thing I wanted to show was, you may recall I mentioned that our RV has a gross vehicle weight rating of 19,084 pounds, and the recommended PSI is 123. So we have Cooper tires. Now, Riverstone goes back and forth, or had gone back and forth, between Goodyear and a Cooper tire. And as I mentioned, those are both the same manufacturers now, and I think they have standardized on the Cooper Work Series. This is specific to the Riverstone brand. Your manufacturer may vary, of course. But this is pretty cool. So remember that number, 19,084 and 123. So I go over here to my tire, which is a 215/75 R17.5, and we look to see the range from 120 to 125. And we can see that at 120, the tire will handle 4720, and at 125 for an H-rated tire, it'll handle 4805. So if I take the difference between that, 4805, and subtract this 4720, that gives me 85. If I divide that by the number of PSI in this last column, which is 5, I'll divide that by 5, that gives us 17. That's interesting. Okay, so that means for each PSI in that last column, we'll add an additional 175 pounds. So I'll multiply that by 3, which gives me 51. Now I have 4 tires, so I'll multiply that by 4. And that gives me 204. Well, okay, so we'll write that down. 204 pounds. Now, if I take what's in column 120, which is 4720 at the maximum there, right? Multiply that by 4. That gives me 18,880. Now, if I add in the 204, that gives me 19,084. Is that just coincidence, or did Riverstone actually do that math? I think they did the math. I talked to a rep at Riverstone. He said they didn't do that math. They said they figured it out by weighing at the pin. And that's all good if that's how they calculated the gross vehicle weight rating. But I think it's a little bit more than coincidence that it matched up to the 123 PSI, which is kind of cool that they did that math if they didn't indeed do it. Right? Okay, so I think that is all I've got. As I said, I put all of the links to all of this information down in the description below. If you haven't subscribed to the channel and you've been watching, I would ask that you really subscribe. That really helps us out. If you have any comments at all, if you want to have a discussion about this, challenge anything I've said, or add some more information for the benefit of others, please put those comments down below. I'd really appreciate it. All right, so now my usual spiel. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you like this kind of content, please subscribe. And if you think anybody else get value from this content, please share it out to them. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate you. See you next time.